Hello everybody, my name is Tommy Hexter, and I am one of the rare young people in Iowa who is a transplant to Iowa. Should not be so rare, but I got drawn in here because I was really invested in the state's agriculture, and because I believe that Iowa is a place that's the heartland, and what we do in Iowa matters for the rest of the world.
That's right.
And so it makes me really happy to look around the room here today and see so many people invested in this race for Iowa agriculture. So thanks for being here, everybody. I grew up on a farm in Central Virginia, and I came to school here, and I wanted a farm in Iowa. It was a produce farm, and I worked on a couple of produce farms in Iowa, but by the time I graduated in 2021, one of those produce farms, Grinnell Heritage Farm, had gone out of business, and the other one, Middle Way Farm, had drastically scaled back. And the reason was not that they couldn't grow the produce, it was that they couldn't sell the produce. And so what I did logically was, well, I knew I couldn't start a farm because the farms that I knew were going out of business, was I took the food hub model that I was seeing around the state, and I adopted it to a local organization here in Grinnell called Grinnell Farm to Table, which is open today, and you can stop by until 5 p.m. They are open for business, and we started a food hub, which works with the other 6 food hubs in the state to aggregate and distribute local food for producers. We now work with over 40 Iowa producers. Some of them are in the room here today. Please raise your hands. Got a couple of them. Barney. And last year we purchased and distributed over $200,000 of food grown in Iowa. A few different federal programs and Choose Iowa, the state's program, have been very helpful because they help level the playing field between the major public investments in the commodity system versus the very little public investment in anything else in Iowa. One of those programs I just want to highlight is the LFPA and LFS program. This is the Local Food Purchasing Assistance and the Local Food for Schools. These were programs that gave money to food banks and to schools to buy food directly from Iowa farmers and then serve them to their patrons, either students or to food bank customers. This was a federal program. It was a $6 million investment from 2022 to 2025, and it was scheduled to be a $12 million investment from 2025 to 2028 before it was canceled in March of 2025. These programs created vital markets in Iowa for producers and for food hubs, and they were canceled, and our current Secretary of Agriculture said nothing other than, you should have expected this. These farmers were left in the lurch. And earlier you said, there's plenty of room, food hubs are doing great. I just want to give a little bit of context to that because that unfortunately is not the case. Food hubs have had their markets dashed by the cuts in these federal programs. And just for a little bit of context, the federal government invests $1.5 billion annually in Iowa agriculture through commodities payments and crop insurance payments. That's true for the last 25 years. The state of Iowa's entire agriculture budget, which Chris would be overseeing if you were elected Secretary of Ag, is $44 million. So for every 97 cents that the federal government invests in Iowa agriculture, the state government invests 3 cents. Of that 3 cents, of that 44 million, less than 2 million goes into the Choose Iowa program. So if, that just makes it really hard for people trying to produce anything else. And honestly, I always like to say Iowa's lost control of agriculture. With that small of a budget compared to what the federal budget is, how do we even begin to change the markets? But that's my question for you today, Chris, is how do we stand up to some of these federal payments from a State Department perspective and make meaningful investment in new markets that give producers choice outside of corn, beans, and hogs and allows them to actually feed their communities?
So firstly, I didn't say the food hubs are doing great. I said they can't get enough food. And I met with the director of the food hub in Southeast Iowa yesterday, and we talked about these budget issues. And after the election, IDALS told the food hubs that this federal money was not going to go away. And so they planned at least this one in Southeast Iowa, planned their budgets around that idea that the federal money was not going to be lost. Then, after Trump was inaugurated, guess what? It was lost, and someone at IDOLS told him, well, you should have expected to lose that money. And so here, this was after IDOLS had told him, you know, you were still going to have that money. So, again, I directly asked her, I said, well, what amount of money do you think it would take to adequately fund all the food hubs in Iowa and the school choice, the Choose Iowa program? And she said $10 million. $10 million was the number she gave me. Well, look at what we're spending our money on here. We gave $70 million to gas stations around the state so they could put in E15 and E85 gas pumps. Okay, $70 million we gave for that, and we can only give $2 million for these food hubs. It seems like if they need $10 million, that's a pretty small number when it comes to government, right? We ought to be able to do that. And so I also know that Mike Negg tries to keep IDOLS as small as possible. He doesn't have big asks of the legislature. And so this is where it starts, right? This is what the Secretary of Agriculture has to do. He has to make the asks of legislature so we can fund the stuff that we want that benefits all Iowans, right? Benefits everybody. And so, you know, anybody can buy food at this food hub, at least at one in Southeast Iowa. And so if you want fresh produce from a locally grown producer, you can get it if they can get their hands on the food. So $10 million for the food hubs, and then we need to devote some money to transition to farmers that want to do this sort of production system. And we have to have programs that enable young people to get their hands on land.
That's right. So
they can do this. And so this is not mission impossible. We can develop policy to make all this happen. We created this behemoth of an ethanol industry with billions of taxpayer dollars. We ought to be able to get these sort of food system outcomes that we want for a tiny fraction of that money.